In this video, I'm going to talk about what I wish I knew before having a job with ADHD. Growing up with ADHD, I've had several different jobs over the years. More than I can count on 2 hands, even 4 hands. I had lots of different jobs because of my ADHD and dyslexia. It was a challenge to find a job that really fit for me and worked for me. So there's 5 things I'm going to share with you of what I wish I would have known, which I hope can be helpful to you. The very first thing that I wish I knew before having a job with ADHD is finding a job that is stimulating. Now, what I mean by this is, for example, one of my jobs I had was doing sales over the phone. In the company, I got also extra bonuses. So this was very stimulating for me because there was a reward system, which really works for our ADHD brain. And so that's something I wish I would have known before versus having a job that was just really mundane. For example, I had a job where I would clean buildings and it was just the same thing. Vacuum this, wipe this down. It was the same thing over and over again. Now, some people with ADHD do better with structure, but for me, what I wish I'd known early on is that I need a more stimulating type of job. Having that said, the second thing that I wish I would have known is having a job with more freedom, access to more freedom versus having a job that is more micromanaging. Now, for example, I had a job where basically when I was a TA, I got to set my own hours. My boss also pretty much just said, hey, as long as you get these papers graded, as long as you are educating the students, you pretty much get to set your own hours. I really liked that job because it really worked for my ADHD brain and having that freedom. I also had other jobs like with landscaping. You know, they would teach me initially how to do it, but they also let me have the freedom of how I mowed the lawns, how I weeded the beds, how I also planted plants because I found a better system that worked for me and I was more efficient because they gave me the freedom. Versus having a micromanaged job, which I've had quite a few of those, is I hated my job. It would also cause me a lot of stress and anxiety, and I would not want to go into work. I'd be very unmotivated to go to work because of the micromanaging. Now, some people with ADHD might do well with that because they need more of that structure, but for me, most certainly not. Even my first job out of medical school, I was micromanaged and I really hated being in a clinic. Which leads into the third thing that I wish I would have known is educating your boss and also your coworkers. I think I could have avoided a lot more bad situations, especially let's just go off the example of the clinic that I worked at right out of medical school. It didn't end very well. I think it could have been handled better if I communicated better of how my mind worked, how my ADHD brain worked. What I have learned over the years of whenever I would explain to my boss or my coworkers how I think is like, hey, look, I am usually very hyper-focused and I will seem to be rude because I am focused on this thing and I will ignore you. Doesn't mean I'm trying to be rude, but that's just how I think. But sometimes also I can get distracted. And so if you can educate your boss and also your coworkers, you might avoid sticky situations of confrontation with your boss or your coworkers and thinking that you're rude or thinking that you are just scattered brain. But if you educate them, then they can learn more about your work style and then work with you. Now, that isn't perfect every time. It doesn't work every time. That's why I left my other job and even other jobs as well that I just felt like I was being micromanaged and they weren't really listening or paying attention. But if I would have done this more often, I think I wouldn't have to have had to skip to different jobs. Which leads into my fourth thing. And this is something I learned early on, but I wish I would have learned from the very beginning, is always having a job lined up before quitting your previous job. Or if you suspect that you're getting fired, always have a job lined up. It's something my dad taught me early on, and it has served me well because anytime I felt like I would need to quit a job because I hated it because I was being micromanaged. For example, I had a job working at Quiznos and that boss, she was very micromanaged and I hated it. So I quickly went and found a different job before quitting. And so it was very easy to say, hey, I got this other greater opportunity. And, I left. So I always, on my resume, I always had a track record of having jobs. So when I would ever apply for a new job, they saw that track record and it was easy to get jobs versus of just quitting and then having a big period of no work. Then that doesn't look so good on your resume. But at the same time, if you suspect you're getting fired, you should always actively be looking for work because again, it might not be your dream job. And it should not feel like you should be stuck in one job, especially if you don't enjoy it. Which leads into my fifth thing of what I wish I would have known before having a job with ADHD, but it's more something that I think I've always known. And it's something that you should always keep in mind. And that is always having your dream job in sight. Now, you might not know what your dream job is, but for me, I knew I was going to be a doctor. And not only that, but really be my own boss, pretty much being an entrepreneur, running my own practice, and now helping people all over the world with ADHD. And having that dream job in sight, every job I had, I knew that. Now, I didn't know it to a full picture. It first started off when I was young at 14, knowing that I had to go to medical school. I was going to be a doctor. I didn't know exactly if I was going to run my own place, but I kind of suspected that. And then I had no idea that I was going to specialize in ADHD, but eventually that did blossom. And that's what happens, is that always having the sight, your dream job in sight, but it can change over time. And then on top of that, when you have that in sight, every job that you take, you could learn skills that can apply to that dream job. So for me, for example, I did a lot of cooking. I worked at a lot of different restaurants. Well, I knew that I would teach my patients about cooking and how to actually eat right. And so I knew that I could apply that. Same thing with also doing sales. I knew why it was important for running your own business. Sales is always going to be important. So it's always having that in mind and not hating the work that you're currently doing, but seeing the end in sight. As great as that sounds, you might be not knowing which that dream job is and what is the best job for you with your ADHD. So you should watch this video right here where it explains what are the best ADHD types of jobs for your ADHD brain. So watch this video right now and I'll see you there in the inside. Thanks. Bye.